personal history with marijuana?
No, I don't. I just think it's the right thing to do. Let's let people who want to smoke it freely. I will be introducing legislation to decriminalize marijuana at the federal level. This means that federal agents will not be arresting people, trying people for use of marijuana. And that's a very good thing. 63% of all Americans are for legalization of marijuana. We're only decriminalizing it. It's something that I think America is waiting for Congress to lead on, and I think this will help do it. Our bill has 5 components. First, we decriminalize marijuana. Second, we're going to make sure that each state has the right to decide. So if you're in a state that doesn't want to decriminalize, that's just fine. Third, we're going to do real research into THC and its effects on health. Fourth, we're going to do some set-asides so that minority and women businesses can get into this business. It shouldn't just be the big boys that come in. And finally, we're going to give the FTC the power to prohibit advertising for marijuana aimed at children, at kids under 18. Why now? Well, we have now seen a whole bunch of states either decriminalize or legalize, and people's lives are better, people have more freedom, and the parade of horribles, which opponents always used to bring up to scare people, increased crime, dramatic increase of other types of drugs by young people, none of that has happened. It's long overdue. First, I have seen families and lives ruined by people arrested and serving long sentences in jail for possessing or selling very small amounts of marijuana. Second, there's real discrimination here. But one of the things that motivates me is how unfair the enforcement of marijuana laws has been, and how many lives have been ruined or hurt very badly by enforcement unfairly and often with a racial bias. But third, and probably most importantly, it's just freedom. Why shouldn't people be able to do what they want, provided they're not hurting anybody else?
Senator, do you have a
I couldn't have said it better myself. Kinda. Well, mostly I could have, but there was one thing in there I didn't really like, and that was the whole part where he was talking about how, you know, hey, if you're Alabama and you don't want to legalize marijuana, you don't have to. And it's hard to see what the federal government's role is going to be in a situation like that. So I don't really understand what exactly Chuck Schumer was trying to say when he said that. But, you know, as far as the federal government goes, if the Alabama State Police want to bust up your grow operation or arrest somebody for smoking a joint or find a roach in your car or a seed in your seat cushion, if they want to roll you and take your farm over it, they can do it. And the federal government will back them up somehow, apparently. Even though his bill will strip marijuana from the CSA. So with Chuck Schumer finally introducing this bill that he promised us on 420 Eve, what we have now is basically a plethora of marijuana legislation on the federal level that in some way or another either decriminalizes it or allows certain things to be decriminalized or to not be connected to like organized crime laws and stuff like that. But what we're doing here is we're taking a whole bunch of different things and trying to add it to this idea that if we take it out of the CSA, we have to do something else. And all these efforts are great, but what happens is there's some things that are left out of this, and there's some things that are in other things that would be better fit in this. And there's other things that are all good except for their thing don't take it out of the CSA, like the States' Rights Act or the States Act. You got the Cory Booker bill, which is not going to get any Republican support anytime ever. And you got the States Act, which has a lot of bipartisan support, but not a lot, because, you know, you're talking about, what has it got, like 9 sponsors right now? It's not very many, man. I mean, there's 100 plus senators. So, you know, there's 100 senators minimum, because there's 50 states and there's 2 in each state. What more do you want from me, man? We are not happy here. We're not happy with any of this legislation. We're not happy with the fact that nobody's signing on to it anyway. These people that live in states that have marijuana legalization laws already in play, whether it's for recreational or medical or whatever you want to call it, they're breaking the federal law no matter what. So why continue this bullshit? Why have all these different things where you're trying to figure it out? And why do we have people that supposedly are representatives in those said states, like Colorado, California, New Jersey? You know, the whole East Coast has medical marijuana practically, and there's a couple states that have recreational marijuana. Where's all those people that are representatives in those states? How come you haven't signed on to any of this shit? What's going on? Especially the Democrats, all right? When are you going to wake up and realize that 7 or more out of 10 people that identify themselves as Democratic voters are pro-legalization? What is the holdup? And I'm serious. You need to go co-sponsor one of these bills. You know how I know? Because we're going to look at who co-sponsored this thing right now before we even go any further. And we're going to do a little checkup on what's going on with these senators. And I'll tell you what my theory is. Well, you got somebody like a Tammy Duckworth and a Tim Kaine, a Jeff Merkley from Oregon nonetheless. And he's hardly ever coming out like hard in favor of marijuana. Now, Ron Wyden, he's a different story. I'm not giving you guys any quarter, any of you senators. Michael Bennet, never heard of you. Senator Elizabeth Warren. Now, I commend her because, you know, she's co-sponsoring this legislation by Chuck Schumer, which we'll go over in a minute. Yet, he's not on the list of co-sponsors for her legislation, the States Act. In fact, there's more Republicans on here than there is Democrats in general. Where are you at, Bernie? What we have here is Lisa Murkowski, Cory Booker. What I'm seeing from the Democrats that do sign on to these things is they're people that have aspirations for their career for the future. They know marijuana is a good push-button issue in their particular area, like Tammy Duckworth in Illinois, Tim Kaine in Virginia. Virginia's picking up steam. The governor's pro-legalization or decriminalization or whatever, and he's, you know, like pretty much everybody that just got elected everywhere is for legalization, and it's like even the Republicans are coming around. But these people that I'm seeing on this list of co-sponsors for this bill by Chuck Schumer, except for Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren, all you other Democrats that are on this list, except for Ron Wyden, because he's always on a pro-marijuana stance, all you others, though, are just trying to kind of patch up your progressive credentials, because you know that there's a progressive wave coming. You know that Bernie started something and it's coming. And that's why you have these sponsors over here. You know, Cory Booker. Actually, if you look at Cory Booker's bill and you look at some of these other things, it's like the people that have presidential aspirations are signing on to these things. And, all right, I'm going to get off my soapbox and then get on with this article. But I'm just saying, man, and when it comes to Republicans, come on. I don't think we're going to see any Republicans signing on to anything Chuck Schumer puts out anytime soon. And that's just the political climate we're dealing with in Washington. You know, I think it would be uncouth behavior if Mitch McConnell decided not to sign on to this bill. Especially seeing how Schumer signed on to his bill and voted for it in the committee or whatever had to happen. I mean, he's been supporting the hemp legislation through and through. So come on. Where you at, McConnell? Where you at, Rand Paul? This is a good one. This is what we've been waiting for. And it might have some stuff in it that's a little over the top for Republicans. I will admit that. Republicans don't want to act like they were wrong yet on marijuana. So asking for retribution and expungement and all this other stuff that this bill might have in it, it's just a reach. It's just a reach. Republicans are not going to sign on to shit like that because they feel like their constituents won't, they won't let them get away with it. Anybody can run against them to the right on the issue and pretend like they're not wrong. Oh, we're not wrong about marijuana being something that should be banned, a substance that should be banned. You should go to prison for selling or growing or whatever that. I mean, this is the kind of shit that these Republicans are thinking, right? All right, so top Senate Democrat introduces Marijuana Freedom and Opportunity Act. And, yep, I've been gone, guys. This was 7 days ago. If you don't know about this by now, I guess, I've seen other outlets that ran this story, and they have, like, lots of hits on their videos and stuff. But amazingly, I was looking for video to watch, and nobody seemed to be covering this. I guess I should have just went to CNN and searched there, but when I searched Google and whatever else, I couldn't get just any mainstream news talking about this. Maybe it's not a big deal. I don't know, because it could just go nowhere, just like the States Act. And if you remember the States Act, let's see. Remember that? I made a thumbnail for it, and Chuck Schumer was one of the senators that was going to, like, guarantee that the States Act was dead on arrival when it got to the Senate. He's not signing on to it. Look at him. He don't want to sign on to the States Act. He's not into it. He's not about that. So Senator Chuck Schumer, who leads his party as a Senate Minority Leader, filed a far-reaching marijuana bill on Wednesday. Titled the Marijuana Freedom and Opportunity Act, the bill would remove cannabis from the Controlled Substance Act. And this is, of course, Tom Angel. Once again, I hate to always read him, but I looked around, and to be honest, man, I don't think people really know how to report about marijuana anymore. The CNN article was just complete garbage. Everybody else, it doesn't even, I mean, if you just want to get the facts and not a bunch of fluff and just stupid opinions and shit, Tom Angel's got your back, all right? Marijuana Moment, go there and check it out if you like to read your news. Anyway, we'll go on. The legislation, which is co-sponsored by Senators Bernie Sanders, Tim Kaine, and Tammy Duckworth, would also set aside $20 million annually to states and municipalities for the purpose of administering, expanding, or developing expungement or sealing programs for marijuana possession convictions. No less than half of the funds would be earmarked for public defenders and legal aid providers. Now, when they said that Chuck Schumer was the leader of the Democratic Party, I would have to disagree with that. Sure, that's kind of his title or whatever, but if you really want to know who's the leader of the Democrats, it's Bernie Sanders. And he's got an I next to his name. That's how bad the Democrats are. They're so just lost as a party and complete shit as a I don't even know what to say about them. They don't stand for anything. They got no message to give to anybody, you know. And it's like I always wondered that when Obama was president, is he never had a message to the poor, quote unquote. He always talked about the working middle class, or even you might have heard him say the working poor once in a great while, but never addressed the poor, never addressed the marijuana movement, never addressed the issue at all, really. So when it comes to addressing issues with solutions, the Democrats haven't done none of that in as long as I can remember. It's almost like they don't want to give you solutions because then they won't have no reason to act like they can run against the Republicans. They just want to talk about things. But when it comes to this issue, no one in the Democratic Party has led on this. Bernie Sanders was the first senator to drop a marijuana bill. I mean, he wasn't the first senator ever, but in the current political climate that we're in, with this rapidly changing marijuana laws all across the state, all across the country, all across the world, on the continent, we have several in what you consider America, North, South, Central America. Several countries now have legalized marijuana. Countries. So this is a whole new era. And in this era, Bernie Sanders was the first person that was considered a Democrat at the time because he was running for president. But it was just before he threw his hat in, he put a bill in to legalize marijuana on the federal level, as in take it out of the CSA. I don't know what else was in that bill exactly. I don't remember. But I do remember it removed marijuana from the Controlled Substances Act, period. So he's the leader of the Democrats, not Chuck Schumer. But anyway, this whole thing where you're talking about the provision that would level the economic playing field in the cannabis industry by requiring the Treasury Department to annually transfer an amount equal to 10% of total tax revenue generated by marijuana, or $10 million, which is greater, to an account called the Marijuana Opportunity Trust Fund. Grants would be doled out by the Small Business Administration to industry outfits controlled by women and socially economically disadvantaged people. Sounds like a good idea on paper, but it's just another tax scheme that the federal government is developing. And it's sad that when Democrats finally decide to do the right thing, they always have to wrangle in some kind of weird tax scheme involved with it. And it doesn't fucking make sense. It's like, what are you talking about? You're going to generate a certain amount of tax revenue from marijuana, and then you're going to tax that at 10% just to get this $10 million or more so you can give money to somebody else to make more money for the government. It sounds like a good idea on paper. We know the government sucks at pulling shit like that off, but we'll see what happens. The time to decriminalize marijuana is now, Schumer said in a press release. The new Marijuana Freedom and Opportunity Act is about giving states the freedom to be the laboratories that they should be, and giving Americans, especially women and minority business owners, as well as those convicted of simple possession of marijuana intended for personal use, the opportunity to succeed in today's economy. The legislation is simply the right thing to do, and I am hopeful that the balanced approach it takes can earn bipartisan support in Congress and across the country. The legislation will also set aside funds for research on the impact of driving under the influence of tetrahydrocannabidiol on highway safety, as well as marijuana effects on the brain and its potential medical benefits. Another provision states that the federal government can continue to prevent trafficking of marijuana to states that have not yet legalized it, implying that interstate commerce among legal states would be allowed. So, I guess it would still leave the door open for the DEA to bust somebody in Kentucky. But would that be even... Well, Kentucky has a medical marijuana program. I mean, it just depends on what you're talking about. Like, the DEA would like to be involved in some kind of busting stuff still after this is all said and done. So I think that's the compromise that we're talking about here. I don't know. Maybe I'll look more into this. I mean, I do have a copy of the actual bill, but I'm not going to read it here today. And if I find out anything about this that just sounds real nefarious, I might do an update about this. So, I mean, I usually don't update these bills that senators and congressmen or congresswomen... I don't really, care too much about any of these bills because none of them are going to come to fruition. None of them. And if any of them do, it would probably be the States Act, not this thing. But the States Act doesn't do what this thing does that I want, which is to totally take cannabis out of the schedule. The Controlled Substances Act is a complete scam on America. It's not constitutional. It shouldn't be considered legal for them to violate human rights based on the fact that somebody wants to take one substance or another to get high. That's period. I mean, just... The bottom line is you can get higher on alcohol than any fucking drug there is. That's a fact. Alcohol will fuck you up more than any drug out there. Everybody knows this. And like someone just made a comment on a video I just made. Alcohol kills 80,000 plus people a year. Smokes them to the grave. Dead. A lot of times, them people aren't even the ones that drank the fucking thing. Because the people that drink the alcohol kill people. Whether it's from accident or on purpose. Alcohol is a bad thing. It's 80,000 people a year. You never hear anybody talk about no alcohol epidemic or alcohol crisis. But for some reason... we got a baby step marijuana, even though it's been around for thousands of years, never caused a single death, never caused anybody to kill anybody else for any reason. And here we are, still fucking arguing about little stupid details about whether somebody can drive across an imaginary fucking line on a map with a fucking car full of weed. This is ridiculous, man. There's absolutely no reason for us to still be having these conversations. The federal government is just full of corruption. And the bureaucracy that is there to take down, to make the drug war happen and make the Controlled Substances Act a legitimate thing is all corrupt. It was all installed in a corrupt way by a corrupt system. And it's not just America, because the drug war is a worldwide thing. And it started at the UN with these stupid drug commissions. Commission on Psychotropic Drugs. Specifically. So, we can talk about this shit all day long, but what we need to do is we need to just disband the Controlled Substances Act immediately. All this small talk about these stupid bills, that's where I started this rant, is I don't give a shit about them. They're just not what we want, and it's like you always try to do all this making up for past ills and trying to level the playing field, this and do that. All you got to do is put a bill down that says the federal government is not going to do anything about marijuana, period. It's off the Controlled Substances Act. It's not something that we're ever going to enforce for any reason, no matter what, because guess what? The states have their own police. And if they want to make marijuana illegal and be dicks, then go ahead. The federal government has no business involved with any of that shit. Okay, and finally, it would require that the Alcohol, Tobacco Tax and Trade Bureau to develop restrictions on advertising and promotion of products related to marijuana. So the government's always like, okay, we're going to neuter the culture. Because that's what that is. That's just totally neutering the culture. Restrictions on advertising. And yet, there's not very many restrictions on alcohol and tobacco advertising. And who cares about this idea that you can... I seen Alexis Bortel tweet about, you know, why are you trying to make it so you regulate it like alcohol and tax it like alcohol? And I agree, man. I mean, alcohol costs society billions of dollars from all the lost days at work, people crashing into shit, people beating each other up, hospital visits. Half the people in the emergency room, half the time, are there because of liquor. And it just never ends, man. The bill's emphasis on facilitating the expungement of the criminal records of individuals for marijuana possession cannot be overstated. Justin Streckel, political director for NORML, told Marijuana Moment. Millions individuals have suffered from the lifelong collateral consequences of criminal prohibition, making it harder for them to find a job, obtain housing, and access to higher education. And that's a good point, because we looked at Bill Bennett's op-ed earlier today, and what he said was basically like, oh, you know, the people that say that more harm has been done by marijuana prohibition, well, they're just ridiculous. They're just being ridiculous. It's like, no, seriously, dude. You know, you're probably the same like racist asshole that would be like, oh yeah, well, the reason that the black community is so riddled with crime and stuff is because there's no father figures around. All the dads are gone, and there's no role models, positive role models. Well, why do you think that is? It's because you put them all in jail for weed, asshole. And yeah, there is a lot more problems because of prohibition than without it. Just look at Colorado. Arrests have went to the floor. All right? And furthermore, the sky hasn't fallen. So, you know, I guess Justin has a point here, a good point. I don't think you should really bundle all this shit together. I think we should just get a clean descheduling and then move on from there. You know, you want to do all this other shit, do it later. Once you have it descheduled, then you can be like, oh, you know what? We really fucked up. Let's go back and fix some of that shit that we did. And here's how we can do that. And do a one-by-one thing, one at a time. This piling it all in here, and it's like just dressing up a salad to try to make it look better, even though it's a bunch of rotten shit that... I mean, it's good. I like it, but I know no one's going to want to touch this that has an R next to their name. So how is a clean descheduling ever going to hit the floor? Let me tell you, it's not. By design, man. And this is just one of these things where Chuck Schumer himself is trying to repair his progressive credentials or whatever after the 2016 debacle. And the progressive wave is definitely on its way coming. He's just like Bernie Sanders' blueprint. Put a fucking marijuana bill down and go from there. So we'll expect another series of events to follow. Hopefully he ain't going to throw his hat in for 2020, because I don't think he'll get very far. We all remember that he first announced this shit the night before 420. I guess that was a dog whistle, like, hey, stoners, I'm going to do something for you. Trust me, you'll vote for me in 2020. I wish I had some glasses. All I got to see is like Chucky Schumer. I don't know. That's And yeah, we're not going to read this shit. But let me tell you, man, this whole idea of taking marijuana out of the Controlled Substance Act is starting to pick up steam. Here's a Senate committee that slammed marijuana's federal classification, saying Schedule 1 blocks research. And this is Tom Angel yet again. And this one is a little more recent here. This one was earlier today. The committee is concerned that restrictions associated with Schedule 1 of the Controlled Substances Act effectively limit the amount and type of research that can be conducted on certain Schedule 1 drugs, especially marijuana or its component chemicals and certain synthetic drugs. The Senate Appropriations Committee wrote in a new report under the headline Barriers to Research. At a time when we need much information as possible about these drugs, we should be lowering regulatory and other barriers to conducting this research. And in a nutshell, there's what that means is like, hey, people are doing this. Marijuana has been getting smoked for hundreds of years in America, and thousands of years worldwide, and you know, people are smoking weed in legal states in a carefree fashion, if you will, and the government should know what's going on. And this is some direct, like, let's just read this one. The committee is concerned with the rapidly changing landscape regarding the recreational use of marijuana, the effects that the drug can have on brain development, addiction, and long-term health effects in both youth and older individuals, the senators wrote. The committee directs the National Institute on Health to coordinate a multi-institute approach to increase research related to the effect of increasing delta-9 tetrahydrocannabinol levels on the human body, as well as the effects of various delta tetracannabinol levels on cognitive abilities that are required to, for example, operate motor vehicles and talk. Well, you know, we long known that there hasn't been any research on marijuana, but the NIH continues to pump out so-called research and links to data mining operational, you know, propaganda, more or less. But what we do is when they put out something positive about marijuana or take down some bullshit reefer madness off their website, we celebrate that. And I don't think we should never reward the National Institute on Health until they completely acknowledge that marijuana is what it is, and stop lying, and stop being shills for big pharma, and stop being shills for the opioid billionaires that are controlling them. So we don't give a fuck about NIH or the National Institute on Drug Abuse and all their other organizations and their multi-institute until they actually start doing real research. We don't believe a word they say. They want federal researchers to resume tests on cannabis seized by law enforcement. I don't know what that is. So they're talking about analyzing seized samples, which would basically, I don't know what they're going for there. But, you know, it doesn't matter. It's like you guys don't research like the proper way. You know, you set your conclusion up and try to back that up with data that you mine, and it's just like it's not good, man. So that's all I got for this video. Hope I wasn't too long with it. It was pretty crazy. Don't mean to be. And that's it. Have a good one. Peace.